Our story starts off with Jang Sang-woo, our main protagonist, and his problem with not being able to do the things he loves because he doesn't have enough time. He contemplates the necessity of having to do things such as eating, studying, and even things he wants to do like partying with friends and going on dates, which leads him to yearn for having multiple bodies to do such tasks. Single in pursuit of the center's an awakening program to try and become an awakener. The awakening program is a government-managed program that aids people on awakening their skills by exposing them to Mana. Sang-woo is part of group number 37 and he enters the portal to find a confirmation window pop up before him with the registration to the system complete. He is brought back to find out that his ability is cloning, something that has never been seen before but is seen as useless due to a past hunter's similar ability. With no interest in appraising his new skill to the public, he exits through the portal and heads home. But once he gets home, he decides to check out his new skill and is surprised to find that his ability not only creates a real physical body but can do anything he tells it to do. The scene cuts off to a much skinnier Sang-woo jogging in a park. This was actually one of Sang-woo's clones and over a course of a couple months had lost a considerable amount of weight. With the help of his cloning ability over those months, he figured out some parameters for his cloning ability. 1. The pain and exhaustion suffered by the clones won't affect him. 2. The clone will simply disappear if the clone is damaged or uses energy beyond its limits. 3. Every time his body changes, the clone will copy his exact appearance right away. 4. He is able to give orders even when not near the clones. And finally 5. It is not possible for the clones to use cloning with his stats consistently increasing due to the high efficiency of his clones. Sang-woo is in need of money to help him increase his ability further. With no ability to give his clones in order that he hasn't experienced before, he has to pick up a part-time delivery and drop-off job to aid his insufficient funds. Through this job, Sang-woo is also given another part-time job of tutoring one of his co-workers' daughters with a plan of having his clones through the delivery and drop-off job. He happily accepts the less labor-intensive job with his tutoring job going well and his clones helping him with the other work. Sang-woo resolves to become a hunter because of their ability to make an absurd amount of money. The profession known as hunter was made due to the result of an incident called the Great Disaster. This event spawned in portals and monsters poured out of them, resulting in nearly half of the population dying, and 23 years after the disaster the profession still stands, and so Sang-woo goes to the hunter center to get a hunting license. Although the test seems to be on the outside very difficult, Sang-woo passes with ease and wonders if the government purposefully makes the test easier so that more people will risk their lives as hunters. With the license exam over, Sang-woo is greeted by a Kang Jummo of the JM agency, a sort of hunter secretary. He informs Anglo of the types of services his company provides, but in the middle of his explanation, Sang-woo gets another pop-up informing him that his cloning skill leveled up and that now he can summon 2 clones, prompting him to run home. The scene then shifts into a flashback of Kang Jumo and his experiences with working in the #1 guild in Korea, the Haesung Guild. The guild is portrayed as being corrupted and it is inferred that Kang left and made his own guild due to this exact reason. Some time passes and King receives a call from Sang-woo informing him that he would like to do business with him, much to the pleasure of King. They decide to meet up in a coffee shop to discuss Sang-woo's plans of taking up safe hunting jobs. King informs him and gives him 2 options for his first job. First, hunting poisonous slimes, which requires full protective clothing due to the poisonous gas and liquid the slimes release. This job is easy, but one would not be able to hunt them for a long time due to the protective clothing melting over time. And second, hunting horned rabbits. Horned rabbits can be hunted for a long time, but it is extremely hard to catch them. Sang-woo likes both the jobs and Kang asks which one of the 2 he would be choosing, but much to his surprise, another Sang-woo appears before him and signs both the contracts. It is revealed that the one King was talking to in the beginning was one of Sang-woo's clones, and Kang is extremely impressed by his skill and is eager to work with Sang-woo. After they settle things, a couple days pass and Sang-woo and Kang go to the hunter center to get authorization for duplicate access to the hunting ground. He needs this due to his plan of hunting in both grounds at the same time. This is solved without a hitch in the to make their way to the hunting grounds, but as they're on their way, King's former boss, the Haesung's guild master named Shin, interrupts them and starts berating them. Sang-woo sticks up for the both of them and prompts the guild master to threaten Sang-woo But right when things were about to get messy, the guild master's secretary takes him away, essentially saving Sangwoo. After this, Sangwoo and Kang talk on their way to the hunting grounds, and it is revealed that due to the spite of Kang leaving the Hai Sung Guild, the guild master had sabotaged and created terrible rumors so that Kang's new agency would not get any hunters. Tom goes by and the scene shifts to Sangwoo finishing up in the slime hunting grounds with a half a tank of slime he collected in a couple hours after talking to Kang about how challenging it is to hunt the slimes for a long duration of time. He sends one of his clones to the hunting rounds to take over. Afterwards, they head over to the horn rabbit hunting rounds where Sangwoo has to rent equipment such as guns and ammunition to hunt the rabbits. One horn rabbit is equivalent to one tank of slime liquid. With his expectations high and his morale even higher, he begins to hunt the rabbits, but much to its dismay, after 3 hours and wasting all of his ammo, he couldn't even get one horned rabbit with his head hung. He decides to leave another one of his clones in the rabbit hunting grounds and heads home. Once he gets home, he contemplates how he needs to get a lot stronger. Recalling his run-in with the Hai Song Guild master, he drifts off to sleep, and the day passes. The scene cuts off to Kang talking over the phone with a distressed slime hunting ground manager. The manager informs Kang that his contracted hunter has been hunting slimes for a whole 24 hours, filling up all the bins full of slime liquid, all without stopping, prompting Kang to immediately make his way over. While on the phone with Sangwoo to order his clone to stop hunting slimes, Sangwoo also informs him about his other clone and how they need help with the horn rabbits. It turns out the other clone had hunted a total of 200 horn rabbits in the course of one night, something never seen before, instantly making Sangwoo famous on the internet. How would he further use his clones to level up, and will he become too overpowered? Well, find out in part 2. This is a continuation of part 1. Make sure to watch that video before this one. After St. Louis clone hunted over 200 horned rabbits, his clone is offered many guild imitations but doesn't talk to any of the recruiters, causing them to swarm even more. After this continues for A, while the real single secretly appears and gives his clone more ammunition to hunt even more horned rabbits, causing the crowd to go even more rampant. The scene then shifts to Sangwoo in the middle of his tutoring job, spacing out, thinking how surprisingly useful the clones actually are. He realizes how his clones are very machine-like in the fact that they don't hesitate at all, and how they also have inhuman concentration on the tasks at hand. His daydream is interrupted by Sangwoo's student, Miss Hae Young. She asked what Sangwoo was thinking about so intently, and he has to break the news to her that he recently became a hunter. She is really impressed, and surprisingly enough, as Sangwoo if he knows the recent hunter all over the internet nicknamed the God of Aim, which funnily enough turns out to be Sangwoo's clone. With Hae none the wiser to that fact, they converse some more and they end up making a promise to go to the hunting grounds together if Hae Young can get good enough grades to get into college. Ending the tutoring session there. After the session, Sangwoo heads over to the rabbit hunting grounds where he meets both Kang and one of his clones. The corpse collection for the horned rabbits is going underway, and Kang shares his amazement of how many corpse collection personnel he had to hire to transport the 200 hunted rabbits. But just as they are enjoying the benefits of the hunt, a hostile hunter approaches them demanding payment. He is upset about how Sangwoo's clone essentially took all of his prey and demands absurd compensation. Although things seem to be hopeless in regards to handling the situation, Sangwoo thinks of a foolproof plan. He purposefully aggravates the hunter and cleverly makes him punch one of his clones, getting it all on video, threatening to use it to ruin his reputation. This plan is successful and the hunter has no other choice, so he leaves frustrated. After the run-in with the hostile hunter, the trio are seen at a coffee shop discussing how the thug that they just confronted most likely was a member of the Haesung Guild. They discuss how the Haesung Guild likely sent one of their members to harass the new member of King's Guild, and King is very distressed by it, apologizing to Sangwoo. But Sangwoo doesn't mind it at all and firmly stands with Kang, even developing another foolproof plan to get stronger a lot quicker. The plan involves going into the hunter market, a departmental store that has everything a hunter would ever need. In the hunter market they buy things such as armor sets for the clones and even the weapons, but what they really came there for was the familiar skill. The familiar skill, if used, enables the user to share their senses and vision with their summons and pets. The methodology behind his plan involves him sending his clones off to training and him using the familiar skill to essentially learn the movements alongside them. Yeah guys, I know it's getting pretty complicated, but bear with me. Sangwoo ends up getting the familiar skill and he sends his clones off the train in both martial arts and shooting practice. His plan is a massive success and he can now essentially copy what a superhuman clones can do, thus making him superhuman as well while sharing senses with his clones. His body receives all the fatigue the clones would experience, so he sits down at a bench to recover, but as he is resting, someone calls his name. He turns and his surprised to see that it's his student Hae-young walking home from studying. They talk about various things, but as they are talking, the thug that approached him at the Horn Rabbit hunting grounds looks at them from afar with two other thugs planning to get back at him while the thug was explaining how he is getting blackmailed by saying glue to his superior. They happen to see Sangwoo, so the thugs go up to both Sangwoo and Hae-young with ill intent. They proceed to threaten Sangwoo and demand he delete the video he took. After Sangwoo doesn't comply with the thugs, they proceed to gang up on him and they get into all-out fist fight, but using his newly acquired knowledge and the senses he gained with his plan with the familiar skill, he puts up a good fight against the three thugs, but things end up escalating so much to the point that Hae-young has to step in and help Sangwoo using her own awakened powers, which gives Sangwoo enough time for his clones to come help. The three thugs are taken care of, and because all the exhaustion from the battle Sangwoo passes out, scene shifts into Sangwoo and Hae-young talking about how the famous hunter all over the internet was one of Sangwoo's clones. Much to the surprise of Hae-young, they talk for a little more, and Sangwoo promises again to Hae-young that they will go out to dinner because of her help in the previous fight. The two part ways, and the day ends. A whole month passes and Sangwoo's abilities have become increasingly more overpowered. He can now use a handgun effectively, and he even leveled up enough to the point to get a third clone. After sending his clones out to level up even further, he thinks of another plan to watch hunting videos to gain even more knowledge about the strategies of taking on various monsters. After the clones are done working out and Sangwoo gained a substantial amount of knowledge on the different types of monsters found in dungeons, he meets up with Kang to send his three clones into three separate hunting grounds all at the same time. All the while he stays home and works on a technique called mana breathing to further his familiar ability use. He ends up getting a meditation skill, something that is not what he was looking for. Scene shifts suddenly to a terrifying mutated fish monster who recently got done killing everyone in a party, presumably where one of his clones would go hunting. Like, guys, when I tell you this thing is terrifying, I'm not kidding. The hunting is going well with the other clones and Sangwoo uses his familiar ability and his new knowledge he gained from watching the hunting videos to effectively hunt the lesser monsters of the dungeon. Things are going well until he realizes he hadn't been picking up any of the monster corpses that his clones had been hunting, so understandably he's chasing the money. He orders his clones to go retrace their steps and pick them back up, but one of his clones comes across a bunch of fish corpses that he hadn't hunted. This is odd because the corpses were slaughtered in a very grotesque way, something no regular hunter could do, and then something horrifying happens. His clone proceeds to find a severed human arm which shifts the whole atmosphere completely, just as Sangwoo was processing what had happened. The fish monster that was mentioned before murders his clone, breaking the link of the familiar skill, resulting in Sangwoo to jolt back in pain. Stunned, he frantically orders all of his clones to come to the fish monster hunting grounds to face this mutated fish monster. The fish monster is called a fish man, and it isn't supposed to be in this low-level dungeon, being a rank D threat, something given a full party of E-class hunters can't hunt. King immediately goes to call the authorities to close the hunting grounds, but Sangwoo sends his clones in to fight it, seeing how they can't just hit and wait for it to kill more people. The clones go into the dungeon with Sangwoo overseeing everything using his familiar skill. They find the fish man eating dead corpses, but this gives them an opportunity to attack first. Sangwoo is confident his clones can kill it in one goal and orders his clones to shoot it, but the bullets bounce off of the monster, only managing to piss it off. Would Sangwoo and his clones be able to defeat this terrifying monster? Well, find out in part 3. This is a continuation of part 1 and part 2. Make sure to watch those videos before this one. After the bullets bounce off of the fish monster, the monster proceeds to attack both of Sangwoo's remaining clones. The fish man is wielding a sort of magical sword, allowing the monster to get stronger by absorbing blood. Sangwoo notices that although the bullets bounced off of it, one bullet actually left a slight wound, prompting him to order his clones to aim for that specific spot. The clones in the fishman have an intense fight with both parties receiving significant injuries. The fishman, after receiving too many attacks to handle, collapses over, with Sangwoo being happy it's over. But it's not over quite yet. Just when he took his eyes off of it for a second, the fishman disappears and its bloody footprints indicate it's making its way to the portal back to Earth. The scene shifts to the other side of the portal, where many hunting ground personnel along with Kang are waiting for both Sangwoo's clones to make it back and higher level hunters to help defeat the fish man. The hunting ground personality, the monster, sprinting towards the portal and proceeds to open fire, but unfortunately the monster makes it through the portal. One of Sangu's remaining clones is then seen throwing his knife at the monster, but it bounces off of it, and just as things seem to be hopeless, the real Sangu catches the ricocheted knife and in mid-air stabs the fish man in the head, killing it. The scene shifts to a Hunter Association hunter, confirming that he had made it to the hunting area where the fish man was found. He is shocked to see that the fish man have been taken care of and is even more surprised to hear that a F-class hunter killed it. He notices that Sangu's attacks were all focused on one wound, concluding that that's how he dealt that much damage to the D-class monster as an F-class hunter. He questions how he was so accurate in shooting a moving target and puts Senglu on his radar. The hunter is then seen entering the portal to check if there are any more rogue monsters. Ending the encounter there, Sangu, after defeating the fish man, levels up a lot, and he even gets a couple new skills such as the sprinting skill, shooting skill, regeneration skill, and even a smite skill. His clones are seen hurt but recovering well, and he explains he has a cooldown for summoning them again to heal the injuries, so he opts to wait it out. Sangu notices that several items have dropped from defeating the fish man, including the short sword that the monster was wielding, which can absorb blood to get stronger, but one other item was dropped. Along with it, it's a low-class jewel, but Sangu mistakes it for a rare item, causing him to have high expectations. But Kang has to break the news to him that it's just a cheap low-class item because it has the potential to have harmful side effects, including turning the user into a monster. Remember this item, it might or might not be of use. Later, after talking with Kang, he heads home with his 2 hurt clones and ends up summoning his 3rd clone again and orders it to keep exercising while the others are resting. Sangu, after cleaning himself up, opens up the short sword he acquired from the fish monster and suddenly remembers what Kang had to say about how it might be a cursed item. Similar to the jewel, he orders his clone to pick it up for safety and finds out through his familiar ability that it indeed has a curse on it, which prompts the user to kill and give it more blood. But this isn't much of a concern for Sangwo because his clones don't get affected by the curse. After things settle down again, he works on his mana breathing skills some more and recollects how he has to go back to school tomorrow. The scene shifts into Sangwoo walking down the hallways of his university heading off to class. He finally remembers how he doesn't have many friends because no one had talked to him up until then. But once he enters the classroom, he ends up meeting one of his gym buddies, Kim Jong-do. They banter a little bit, and they notice that everyone in the class is whispering how much Sangu had changed, and some even want to go on blind dates with him. Lucky dude Sangu doesn't really believe he changed too much and asked him if he really changed that drastically, which Kim responds, "I bet your parents won't even recognize you," which reminds Sangu that he was planning to go back home soon. They talk a little bit after and Kim invites Sangu over to drink with the boys, but Sangu refuses, explaining how he had a prior engagement, much to the disappointment of Kim. The scene shifts again to the World Hunter Association headquarters, where they explain how an oracle has predicted a disaster which involves a creation of a portal and an invasion of hundreds of monsters onto Earth. They further detailed that the event might happen in the next couple days, and the suspected locate nation was South Korea. The terrible thing is the monsters that are expected to come out of it are up to a rank which means the whole of South Korea can be devastated if they don't evacuate soon. To put it into perspective, the highest rank the military can fight off is D rank, so hunters are the only option they have to fight this disaster. Thus, a meeting calling all the biggest guilds in the country has been created. Park Wanti is the guild master for the rank number 3 guild in the country, and he is seen talking with Han Maiho, the guild master for the YOLO guild. The YOLO guild is the rank number 6 guild in the country, and they are seen walking to the meeting room. They make their way in the meeting to find the person we all hate. The rank 1 guild master in the country, Shin Hai Sung Shin, proceeds to provoke and berate Park Wanti about their guild's apparent failed hunting mission, prompting everyone in the room to feel uncomfortable. The tension is broken by the association leader starting the meeting about the disaster. The association leader explains the situation, and every one of the guild masters voices their concerns over the lack of personnel for this disaster, especially having to cover the entirety of South Korea. Park Wanti, in the midst of the arguments, proposes a foolproof plan involving having each guild prepare a team of hunters that can be dispatched right away in case of the disaster happening in their area. With that in place, when the disaster happens, the guilds will gather in that location and concentrate their manpower there. And as a fail-safe, he explains how any guild not not wanting to participate will face severe punishment. Everyone votes in favor of Park's plan and the meeting ends Sang-gul is seen getting done with his classes and is happy at how fast it went by, but as he is walking home he encounters a student Hae-young, explaining to a stranger that wanted her number that she had a boyfriend. Hae-young sees Sang-gul coincidentally walking by and uses this opportunity to pretend like Sang-gul is her boyfriend, much to the disgust of Sang-gul. The plan works and a few minutes pass and the scene shifts to Sang-gul and Hae-young talking about why she was there in the first place, but just as they are bantering back and forth, Sang-gul gets a message from Kang informing him that his payment for hunting the fish man came and he sees 50 million won in his bank account, about $40,000, and tells Hyung that they're going to eat good tonight. He fulfills their promise to go out to dinner from earlier and they head to a Korean barbecue restaurant. They eat a lot of expensive beef at the restaurant and they seem to be having a good time, but just as things seem too good to be true, suddenly all the electronic devices including their phones and the restaurant's TVs shows an emergency broadcast notice advising everyone about the upcoming monster invasion, prompting everyone to evacuate immediately. Three of Sang-gul's friends including Kim from before are seen walking by the same Korean barbecue place that Sang-gul and Hae-young were in. They are seen expressing their disappointment about how Sang-gul has skipped out hanging out with the boys for possibly hanging out with a girl, but funnily enough their concerns come true and they see Sang-gul with Hae-young and are furious, calling him a traitor. But just as they were complaining, their phones also blow up about the monster invasion. They don't seem too concerned about it and they end up meeting Sang-gul and Hae-young exchanging formalities. Sang-gul anxiously orders all of them to go home and he sees that everyone around him isn't taking this as seriously as he is. Through this concern, after all of his friends go home, he gives King a call and Kang gives him all the details of the event, confirming Sang-gul's overlay cautious concerns. Sang-gul expresses his frustration at how the association is handling the situation, not making this invasion notice as serious as it really is. Kang explains that this might be due to the fact that there will be a huge economic impact if their country is on full lockdown for a long duration of time, and the association would not want to be blamed for taking people out of employment, seeing that if they issue a light warning they won't be held liable for their deaths. This rightfully does not sit well with Sang-gul, and Kang also explains that every hunting ground will also be under lockdown, so Sang-gul will not be able to hunt for a while, prompting Sang-gul to go meet up with his family like he planned to do before he gathers all of his now recovered clones and heads home where his mom, dad and sister are. He makes it to his parents' apartment and rings on their doorbell, recalling how it really has been 3 months since he last seen them. His mom opens the door and much to the project section of Kim Jeong-do, all of his family members don't recognize him in the slightest. They take a second to get used to his drastic change and the family all see that he had brought some friends with him, but Samuel has to explain to them that they're not necessarily friends, but they're his clones, so he has to explain everything about how he had become an awakened hunter. His mom voices her concerns about the dangers of being a hunter and he reassures her that there's no danger due to the nature of his skill. Sang-gul also voices his concerns about the upcoming monster invasion and as why they didn't evacuate to the shelters already. His dad explains that he still has to work to provide for the family and they can't necessarily afford to stay at the shelter, believing that it isn't that serious, but deep down Sang-gul knows of the severity of this monster invasion and so to compromise he decides to stay with them for the time being. The family proceeds to have dinner and Sang-gul brings out the leftover expensive Korean beef he got at the restaurant. Much to the surprise of his family, he is happy hanging out and eating dinner with his family again and thinks to himself that he should have visited sooner, seeing their hospitality. But just as they were about to start eating, the building explodes. Sang-gul opens his eyes after blacking out and sees his whole family slumped out on the floor. In the daze he sees that the apartment is in shambles and he sees a horrific number of monsters pouring out of the portal that happened to spawn right next to his house. What will Sang-gul do, and would him and his family be able to survive this disaster? Well, find out in part 4. This is a continuation of part 1 through 3. Make sure to watch those videos before this one. Sang-gul opens his eyes after blacking out and sees a gaping hole in his apartment. He is left paralyzed in fear as he witnesses hordes of monsters pouring out of the portals that subsequently spawn next to his apartment. He sees a monster charging up for an attack that's aimed straight at his apartment and finally comes to his senses, but the attack still lands. He screams out for his family members, but they are still on the ground unresponsive. He sees that although the attack did indeed make contact, one of his clones shielded the whole family from the blast, saving the family. but dying in the process. He notes that one of his 2 remaining clones is severely injured, stating how he is very much lacking in manpower. Sangu's family slowly come to their senses, and Sangu orders them all to pack and get ready to go to the emergency shelter. The carnage outside is atrocious, with monsters killing everyone on the street. They make their way down to their car to reach the shelters, but they find that the monsters devastated everything, and being a 2-kilometer trip to the shelter, they don't have any other choice but to go through the underground tunnels located under their apartments. Underway, they see a person underneath some rubble caused by a D-class monster called a troll. He is seen screaming for help, and when Single and his dad see this, his dad rationalizes with Sangu, saying that they have to worry about themselves and that they're in no situation where they can help someone else. But Sengu can't just stand there and watch a person get killed, so he tells one of his clones to protect the family and orders his family to go to the shelters without him. With the obligation of being a hunter, he takes one of his clones with him and goes to rescue the man. As he is engaging with the troll, an ominous-looking monster is portrayed looking at Senglu, fighting, mimicking the way he talks. The scene shifts back to Sangwoo fighting the troll with a baseball bat, and he orders his clone to use the newly acquired shore sword. Along with the cursed jewel, the clone ingests the cursed tool and, much to Singwoo's surprise and King's warning, the clone turns into a monster. Sangu was startled so much at this sight that he even questions if he's still on his side. The clone stats increase, and Sengu also gets those stat benefits, but luckily for him, he doesn't turn into a monster himself. The fight continues, and the monster clone inflicts a lot of damage, but unfortunately the troll has a very powerful regen ability, and no matter how much damage his clones do, the troll always recovers. But Sangu has a plan. He orders his clone to cut the troll's legs as to make him fall over, and once the troll fell, Senko shot it in the eye, impairing its vision. Once the troll had lost its sight, he uses his newly acquired strike skill and his baseball bat to blow the troll's head off. The plan works and they defeat the troll. Sengu celebrates and even cracks jokes, but after he looks around the devastated town, he is quickly brought back to reality. The scene shifts over to the hunters of the Red Fire Guild, the rank 9 guild in Korea, and the Scorpion Guild, the 7th ranked guild in Korea. They are seen fighting off the monster's horn, but are turning it more of a cash grab rather than earnestly wanting to help the people. A military aircraft is seen dropping off. Park Wante, our favorite character, he is seen ordering his men to evacuate the survivors since the other guilds are prioritizing getting loot that the monsters drop. He is disgusted by the greedy guilds and takes it upon himself to personally help the remaining survivors. He subsequently sees Senku and his clone fighting off the hordes of monsters coming at a group of civilians. They are enduring well, but Sangu is quickly losing energy and exhausted himself greatly. A bird-like monster is seen hurling an attack at the citizens, and Sangu's remaining clone ends up sacrificing itself to protect them. But just as Sangu is about to get attacked by the monster as well, a massive tiger monster kills it. The tiger monster is dead set on killing Senglu, and Sengu sits defeated, ready to die. But just as he was about to get murdered, Parkwin steps in and kills a monster in one strike, decapitating it, showing the sheer difference in strength between Sangu and a top-level hunter. The scene shifts again to the shelters where Sangu's mom, dad, sister and cloner. Sangu's sister screams at his clone to let go of her and expresses her concerns for Sangu's safety, but being ordered by Sangwoo, the clone won't let her go. Her dad calms her down and the situation settles, but just as a concern subsided, a voice came from outside the shelter door, banging on the door and pleading for the people in the shelter to let them in. The people in the shelter converse amongst themselves and come to a consensus that the person behind the door must not know the password. Using a camera, they see a silhouette of a person behind the door, and Sango's sister thinks it's Sangu. She is excited to see her brother safe and opens the shelter door, but what she sees next is traumatizing. The monster mentioned earlier is seen using a dead body as a puppet, effectively tricking everyone into dying. The monster is seen eerily thanking Sangu's sister for letting it in, and the panel turns black. The people at the shelter are seen running away in fear, and Sangu's clone attacks the monster only to have his dagger break on impact. The monster with its sharp knife-like appendage stabs through the clone and sadly hits Sango's sister as well. Emergency protocol kicks in and the shelter's doors begin to close. St. Louis clone sees this and throws itself at the monster through the door, sacrificing itself. The scene shifts back to Park Wante and Sangwoo. Senglu is in shock seeing how strong this person was, but Park extends his hand and helps him on his feet. They converse a little, and Park is really impressed with Sangwoo, and he asks what his skill is, but right when Senglu was about to tell him, he senses the link with his remaining clone being severed, and immediately goes over to the shelter, having no other choice but to wield the cursed short sword. Sengu's sister lays dying on the floor of the shelter, and his parents cry and plead for somebody to help them. The monster tears the door open, and the survivors all lose hope, but just when it was about to attack, Sengu comes out of nowhere to rescue them. He sees his sister dying on the shelter floor and he goes crazy with the fuel at the sight of his sister, and the curse of the short sword. He transforms into a monster himself and starts to attack the monster. He sustains substantial wounds, but manages to fight off long enough for Park Wante and his rescue squad to come help. The healer sees Sengu and exclaims how he's in critical condition, but even through the pain, Senglu pleads for them to save his sister first. Park Wante faces a monster and Sanglu, due to losing too much blood, loses consciousness. Will Sangula and his sister survive? And what will happen to the monster invasion? Well, find out in part 5. This is a continuation of part 1 through 4. Make sure to watch those videos before this one. The monster had injured Sengu significantly, leaving him with a gaping wound. But even through the pain, Senglu is seen pleading for Park Lan to save his sister first. Park Wanti, seeing his desperation, assures him that no one's going to die and he faces the monster. Sangu, losing too much blood, proceeds to lose consciousness. The scene shifts to the leader of the guild association, defeated as he hears the news about the ongoing monster invasion and how severe the situation actually is. He has a flashback with his run-in with Shin Hae-sung. The person we all hate, Hae-sung, is seen persuading the guild association leader into not adequately evacuating the population, saying how if the monster invasion doesn't occur, then the association leader will be the one to blame for taking thousands of people out of their jobs, potentially putting his job at risk if this happens. Hessen coldly states how if he chooses to hide the fact that the severity of this invasion, then the people are to blame for not evacuating, taking the blame off of the association leader. Hae-sung is a twisted person and believes that if more people die, the more the people will depend on hunters, essentially saying how he wants the invasion to cause a lot of deaths for his own profit. The guild association leader, being threatened by him, opted to only issue a light warning, and thus the tragedy that we all know happened because of this one interaction. The scene shifts the Sangu on top of his clone doing push-ups while eating a bag of chips. He demands his clone to work harder, and he exclaims how his skill is so amazing, being that he doesn't have to work hard at all himself. He rejoices, thinking to himself how he doesn't have to worry about anything for the rest of his life due to his amazing skill. But in the middle of his daydream, he gets a text from Kang saying how he had arrived at his house to pick his clones up. Sengu is planning on sending one of his clones to the hunting pounds, and Kang asked where his other clones are. Sengu tells him that he sent them to do some exercising, and Kangason asking Sengu why he doesn't exercise himself, saying how he thinks he'll get a lot stronger faster if he does so. Sangwa doesn't really fancy this idea and essentially says why should I. He is more than complacent with the slow progress he has made so far, even with Kang saying how Sangu with his limitless potential can possibly become the world's best hunter if he uses his skill right. Senglu responds with I'm fine being able to handle myself, and this is when the atmosphere darkens. Kangason responding so this is how you ended up like this, and suddenly Sangu's fatal wound opens up and blood shoots everywhere while Kang stares at him with a demonic sunken look in his eyes. Sengu, terrified, turns around and sees his whole family with the same dead look in their eyes. They ask why he became a hunter if he isn't capable of saving his own family. Sangu, traumatized, screams at the top of his lungs, and he suddenly wakes up in a hospital bed covered in cold sweat, this thankfully only being a nightmare. After realizing his situation, he is met with Park Wanti by his bedside, saying how he's lucky to be alive because of how deep the wound actually was. Sangu thanks Park Wanti for saving him once again, and he says it's nothing. Park explains how there's a lot of things he wants to talk about with Sangwoo, but now isn't the right time. His mom and dad are seen rushing into his room crying, and Park makes his leave. His parents fill him into the details of what happened after him losing consciousness, and it is revealed he had been in a coma for 4 days. During that time, the monster invasion was thankfully contained and only lower level monsters remain. Sangwoo suddenly remembers his sister, and he asks everyone in the room if she's all right, but no one looks him in the eyes. It is sadly revealed that Sengu's sister was infected with a mana-absorbing virus, something that can't be cured. The nature of this virus makes it so healing magic doesn't work on it, and the only thing that can keep her alive is supplying her with a steady stream of mana, leaving her bedridden. The doctor does say there might be a chance to cure her, but it will be impossible with the resources Sangwoo currently has. Sangu, seeing this, falls into guilt. He is seen kicking himself for putting his own chivalrous sense of duty before his own family, and he blames himself for this incident. He is seen saying to himself if only he had the ability to save everyone, and if only he worked a little harder, this all would have never happened. The scene shifts to Sangwoo defeated, laying on a hospital bed, suddenly his student Hae-young is seen stopping by with a get well soon present, and they talk about the monster invasion. Sang-woo after a while explains how he is planning on quitting school, much to the surprise of Hae-young. He shares what happened with his sister and explains how he can no longer teach Hae-young as well. She reluctantly thanks him for everything he had done up to that point and putting on a smile to hide her heartbreak. The scene turns black too. Weeks pass and Sang-woo had miraculously healed his injuries, something that would have normally taken a couple months. Much to the astonishment of his doctors, he is seen putting on a suit and it is revealed he is going to see Park Won-tae about the thing he wanted to talk about previously. On the way to meet him, he looks up Park Won-tae on his phone and is surprised to learn that he is a guild master. He makes his way into his building and he goes up to the front desk and informs a receptionist that he wanted to meet Park. The receptionist doesn't see any reservations made and she is a little skeptical, seeing that some random person wanted to talk with the guild master. But just when she was about to tell him to leave, one of Park's subordinates asks him if his name is Sang-woo. Sang-woo is astonished at how massive the person in front of him is and reluctantly says yes. Getting his confirmation, the man is seen personally escort to Park's office. Sang-woo makes it to Park's office and they exchange formalities. Sang-woo thanks him again for helping him, and it is revealed that not only did Park save his entire family and get them to the hospital, he had also paid for the private rooms they used and even paid for Sang-woo's sister's hospital fees. All these things considered, Sang-la is concerned if Park is going to use these things to blackmail Sang-woo into being indebted to him. But that is not the case, rather Park through gritted teeth explains how he needs Sang-woo's help because his sister went missing along with her teammates during a dungeon raid, something that was hinted at previously. Park explains how he saw a little bit of himself in Sang-woo and wanted to help any way he could but doesn't pressure Sang-woo to help him in return. Rather, after explaining that Sang-woo with his skill is the only person in the world that can help rescue his missing sister, Park hangs his head and begs Sang-woo for help. Sang-woo is seeing his desperation and seeing how he saved his pain family and himself multiple times. He happily obliges Sang-woo, asks him how he should help, and suddenly the scene shifts to him in the Canis Guild's training grounds. It turns out there are two reasons as to why Park brought him there. First, Park explains how thanks to his sister's preparations beforehand, her team can survive for approximately 8 months in the dungeon with the supplies they have, and second, the dungeon is such a high level that his sister's full elite team was injured so much to the point that they're not able to escape. So Park's plan is to personally train Sang-woo to get stronger so that he and his clones can help his sister and her team to escape. The first day of training starts and the scene shifts over to Kang. Kang, having not seen or talked to Sang-woo in a while, is nervously looking at his phone in hopes of some word from him. But right on cue he suddenly hears a voice from behind, and it turns out to be Saint Woo. King is shocked to find Sengul all beaten up and injured due to the training with Park. They fill each other in with what happened since the last time they met, and Samuel explains the situation with his sister and the virus and how he plans to help Park in return for his kindness. King voices his concerns for his health, but Sang-woo reassures him, and the day passes. The second day of training ensues, and Sang-woo brings one of his clones in hopes of changing the outcome of the training. But to no avail, he and his clone are seen injured and walking home with their heads hung. Another day passes and he brings 2 clones, but the outcome is still the same. Yet another day passes and he brings 3 clones, and finally the results are still the same. Fed up with constantly losing no matter how many of his clones he brings, he is seen talking with Kang about acquiring a certain item for his clones. The next day of training ensues and Singul is seen going to the training grounds, but with something up his sleeve. It is revealed that he had given his clones more cursed jewels and turned them all into monsters. Would he finally be able to defeat Park Won-tae, and would he be able to get strong enough to save his sister? Well, find out in the next video. This is a continuation of part 1 through 5. Make sure to watch those videos before this one. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe, it'll help me a ton. The next day a training ensues and Sang-woo is seen going to the training grounds, but with something up his sleeve. It is revealed that he had given his clones more cursed jewels and turned them all into monsters. The added status effects are applied to Sang-woo as well, but without the risk of him becoming a monster himself. He orders his clones to attack Park and an all-out battle ensues. Park Won-tae actually handles the monsterized clones well due to the fact that their accuracy had fell significantly as a side effect of gaining more strength. Although Senglu can't really compare to Park, Park actually is impressed with his effort and sees a noticeable change in strength since the first time they started training here. Senglu goes into a monologue about how he isn't just getting stronger for the mission that Park had given, rather he wanted to get stronger to fight despite the helplessness he felt during the monster invasion when he had to entrust his family's lives to someone else, resolving to never have that happen ever again. He trains extremely hard every day for the next 6 months straight with Park as his training partner. The scene shifts to the Sin Sol Dong Station hunting ground, where a hunter from a party is getting beaten by members of the Silver Moon Guild for using the hunting ground without their permission. The Silver Moon Guild is a corrupt and vile guild, and even though the party that is getting beaten has a hunting license, they still say they control the grounds. The guild is so powerful that the guard station at the grounds has to turn a blind eye to this discrimination. Here we see Senglu coming to the hunting grounds, and he just so happens to see this unfair treatment happening. The Silver Moon leader confronts Sanggu and actually throws a punch at him with no warning, but Sanggu catches the punch as it feels nothing. Senggu throws a quick punch back at the thug and he collapses in one hit. His guild members seeing this all gang up on Sangwoo, all of which are using lethal weapons. They get into a huge fight, and it's ugly with Sanglu's clones helping him. He beats the guild with ease and the people that he saved watch in disbelief. The scene shifts to Kang and Parkwante meeting about something they wanted to talk in person about. King hands Park a confidential document and it's revealed it's about Sanggu. The document shows how insane Sanggu has been training, and it's shown that his stats are 19 times the amount they used to be, on top of tons of new skills he had gained from the 6-month time period. Parkwante is awestruck seeing his explosive growth, and he projects that Sanggu might become an A-rank hunter in the near future. Seeing this massive leap in his stats, he wants his sister's Team 1 rescue mission to commence. The scene shifts back to the hunting grounds, and here we're met with the familiar face, the thug that Sanggu had beat up during the horn rabbit hunting incident. He is seen picking up the jewels that had dropped from the monsters in the dungeon, and he does this to try and pay off his debt to the Silver Moon Guild. Sanggu sees this and questions him, asking what he is doing. It turns out that the D-class monsters in this dungeon sometimes fight each other, resulting in them dropping jewels. Thus, lower rank hunters can pick them up and sell them without the need to fight the monsters directly. Seeing that Sanggu had defeated the entirety of the Silver Moon Guild, he tells the thug to leave the dungeon in exchange for giving Senglu the jewels he had collected. The thug angrily makes his way out of the hunting grounds, and Sanggu proceeds to feed the bag full of jewels to one of his clones. Seeing how this is a great opportunity to level up his clones, he resolves to hunt some of the monsters himself, and here we're met with a person running for their lives from a C-rank monster called the Abomination. This person, his name is Kim Yu-yan, and they're a Silver Moon Guild laborer. Tripping and falling, Kim is left powerless as the monster hurls an attack at them. But just when the attack was going to land, Sanggu comes out of nowhere and pulls Kim out of the way, saving them. Sanggu is seen asking Kim many questions and doesn't really seem worried about the C-rank monster right in front of him. Kim doesn't answer the questions, being too distressed by the life or death situation, but Sanggu's monsterized clone is seen fighting the monster off. Kim, being really confused by the situation and not knowing what to do, tries to run away, but Sanggu stops them again. But just as things started to look safe, his monsterized clone is seen being defeated by the C-rank monster. Sambu surprisingly doesn't seem scared at all and is actually just disappointed and a little annoyed in his clone for not finishing the job. He goes up to the monster and pulls out his cursed short sword, fighting the urge of becoming a monster himself, but he faces a monster and kills it in one hit, showing the sheer amount of power Sanggu had gained through his training with Park. Kim is again left in awe as Sanggu sheaths his sword. Sanggu's clone, though, lays dying on the ground as the wound on his shoulder is too deep to heal. But just as Sanggu was going to give up on him, Kim hand Sanggu a mysterious vial of liquid. Kim says to Sanggu that this medicine can help him live a little longer, but says to not blame them for what would happen after. The strange vial full of green liquid has schools all over it, and Sanggu is skeptical but ends up giving it to his clone. Seeing how he has no other choice, miraculously the clone's huge gash heals in an instant and Sanggu is astonished, but Kim doesn't seem too thrilled, and here it is revealed that Kim has a poison skill, and although the vial of liquid saved his clone's life, for now the side effect is that it takes a person's life and energy and eventually will kill his clone in the future. Having revealed their skill to Sangwoo, they demand Senglu to share his. Kim has never met somebody that can have monster-like pets and also the ability to defeat C-class monsters on their own, piquing Kim's interest. Kim is sure that Sanggu is a higher-ranking hunter, but Sanggu explains how he's only an E-class hunter, much to the bewilderment of Kim. They go on to discuss more things, and the panel turns black. Here the scene shifts to the YOLO Guild storage facility, and again we are met with a familiar face in hand, Miho, the YOLO Guild master. She is seen talking to the manager of the guild about a weird favor that Park Wanti asked her to do. It is revealed that they are collecting crates upon crates full of cursed jewels, supposedly to give to Sangwoo. Would Sangwoo be able to level up further with the YOLO Guild's help? What would this encounter with the new character Kim, lead to and finally would say will be successful in rescuing Park's sister. Well guys, find out in the next video. This is a continuation of part 1 through 6. Make sure to watch those videos before this one. Also please make sure to like and subscribe, it will help me a ton. After saving Kim from the monster, Manhwa is seen questioning her about why she had mentioned the Hyacinth Guild earlier when they were running away. Kim explains that the Silver Moon Guild is like a minion for the Hyacinth Guild and basically does all the dirty work for them. Kim states how she's sure that a lot of the people who are hunting in the dungeon right now are there because they got caught up by the Hyacinth Guild. Sango then asked how Kim got caught up in the dungeon herself, and here Kim has a horrifying flashback of somebody committing not alive in front of them as a child, but Kim quickly comes back to her senses and tells Sangu it's none of his business. Sangwa is left shocked and confused by this, but he doesn't push the matter further. He bids farewell to Kim, but before he goes he gives Kim his business card and tells her that if she encounters any trouble with the Hyacinth Guild she can contact him anytime and he'll try to help the best he can. He tells one of his clones to escort Kim out of the dungeon, and Sangwoo makes his leave. The scene shifts to Sangwoo fighting off some of the monsters in the dungeon, but here suddenly his monsterized clone coughs up blood, falls over and dies. Sangwoo is shocked but remembers what Kim said about the mysterious liquid she had given him. He summons his clone once again and the issue is solved. They go on to continue hunting like nothing happened, but as he is defeating the monsters, the Silver Moon Guild members that were beaten by him previously are seen observing Sangwoo from afar. They whisper among themselves how Sangwoo is a monster and he's too dangerous to fight even with their numbers. They go on to opening a secret door in the dungeon, and one of the members explains how what's in there is the sole reason they've been restricting the hunting grounds. He pries open the door and it is revealed to be a science lab which is used to create an illegal substance called jewel crystals, something made from refined cursed jewels. Its effects are said to be 100 times that of any ordinary jewel, and one tiny bit of it can increase somebody's stats significantly, but at the cost of even more severe side effects. All things considered, using it on humans is way too dangerous, but the thugs go on to introduce a project called DEP, which had found a way to refine this jewel crystal further to make it usable on humans. They revel at the millions of dollars they have in these jewel crystals, and they swiftly close the hidden door as they make their leave. But just as they leave, Kim is seen prying the hidden door open and taking bricks of the jewel crystals and smuggling them out. She sprints out of the dungeon, and the scene shifts to the Silver Moon Guild the next day. Furious about having their product stolen from them, one of the members is seen grabbing a guard by his neck and screams at him, demanding him to explain how something like this could have happened. The guard frantically exclaims how the only person that could have done it was Sang-woo, and the panel turns black. The scene shifts to Park Wanti explaining the Tower of Adana S-class dungeon that even the strongest hunters couldn't beat. Countless hunters had tried and tried again to clear this dungeon, but none were able to make it back alive except for one mysterious hunter called George Lucas. Park goes on to explain that his sister and her team are currently stuck in this very dungeon. It is stated to be a special dungeon with an entrance but no exit, meaning the only way to escape is to clear the dungeon or by using something like a teleportation skill to return. That is the reason why Sangu was scouted by Park Wante. Park reluctantly tells the story of his past, and the scene goes into a flashback about the events that led to his sister being trapped in the dungeon. The year is 2005. 5 years after the huge disaster that destroyed the world, a 16-year-old Park Wante is seen fighting off monster as he protects his at the time 9-year-old sister named Park Yuna. It is revealed that his sister had a super special skill which allowed her to create subspace storage, which she could put anything of any amount in there with no drawbacks, along with Lante's strength and her subspace storage skill. They had managed to survive to adulthood. The scene fast forwards to them all grown up, with Wanti becoming the guild master for the Kinnis Guild and Yuna becoming the leader of the best team in it. Here they quarrel about the necessity of going to the Tower of Aden, and Yuna, even though Wanti is reluctant, manages to persuade him into letting her team try to clear it. She exclaims how using her skills she had made all the necessary preparations, and she assures Monty that she will send the team back if they deem it too dangerous. Getting the reluctant okay from Wanti, they set off to the Tower of Aden. A few weeks pass and the progress reports using telepathy scrolls revealed that they're doing good, but one day as they're doing the normal progress report, the scroll reveals how the whole team was ambushed by an unknown monster and the team had sustained significant injuries. A teleportation scroll was used and a member of Team 1 manages to return back, but he is on the brink of death. Through gritted teeth he reveals that an ultra-powerful monster had suddenly appeared and wiped the entire team out. The last words that his sister had said were, "Sorry, we have failed the mission." And the flashback ends. Park Wanti explains how from then on he had been trying to recruit countless hunters to help him, but none of them would. But that is until Sangwoo appeared before him. Seeing that all the preparations were now complete, he wants the mission to start. The scene shifts to the guild master for the Silver Moon Guild beating up the lower ranking members for letting their product get stolen. He is furious and enacts revenge on the person who stole it and demands they find Sangwoo, believing that he was the one who stole the jewel crystals. Here we're introduced with the character the vice leader for the Silver Moon Guild as he is tasked with finding Sangwoo. The day passes and here we follow Sangwoo and Kang talking with each other about the mission and how they think Park Wanti is purposefully keeping information from them. They ponder as to why Wanta would send his best hunters to challenge a dungeon like this, and it begs the question of what Wanti was hoping to get from it. This talk was interrupted with them stumbling across Kim sleeping in front of the agency building. She wakes up startled, but her stomach growls loudly and so they decide to discuss things over dinner. She wants to join the JM agency with Sangwoo, and even though she has a weird skill, Sangwoo puts in a good word for her, and so she gets the job before Sangwoo leaves for the rescue mission. Kim hands him a couple potions, one for strength and the other for mana, but like you probably guessed it, side effects are deadly. Sangwoo happily takes them and he summons his clones as he makes his way to Wanti for the mission. You guys remember how the Keenest Guild was supplying massive amounts of cursed jewels for Sangwoo? Well, the scene shifts to the Silver Moon Guild vice leader stealing them as he burns the whole warehouse down, essentially starting a war with the Keenest Guild and the Silver Moon Guild. The scene shifts to Iceland, the place where the Tower of Odin's dungeon gate is located. Sangwoo is flown all the way there and he meets with Wanti and the vice leader of the guild. They go on to explain how the location of where Team 1 disappeared is 40 kilometers away from the entrance. Wanti hands him 3 teleportation scrolls just in case of an emergency, and with these final preparations he sends his clones to the dungeon while he uses his familiar skill to essentially take over one of his clones' bodies. Using this leveled up familiar ability, he is now able to feel everything and be in control as if he was really there. He and his clones navigate through the dungeon, all the while fighting off weaker frostbats. Due to his clones having defeated many frostbats, the boss monster variant appears, but as if it was nothing, he and his team defeated with ease. After traversing the dungeon for 13 kilometers, or roughly a fourth of the way to where Team 1 disappeared, they encounter a new stronger monster. They fight them off as usual, but suddenly the ground under Sangwoo breaks and an ultra-powerful ice golem appears. It disturbingly grabs one of the lower-ranked monsters and eats it, terrifying Sangwoo. How would Sangwoo handle this monster, and would he be able to save Team 1? Well, find out in the next video. This is a continuation of part 1 through 7. Make sure to watch those videos before this one. Also, please make sure to like and subscribe, it'll help me a ton. After the ice golem eats one of the lower-ranked monsters, it sets its sights for Sangwoo and his clones. They manage to dodge its attacks and they try to damage it themselves, but their magic bullets don't even leave a scratch on it. Sangwoo suddenly remembers Park Wante's instructions in the event of coming across this very monster. Park had explained that the only way to kill a golem is by destroying its core, but in the middle of his thought, one of his clones that had a teleportation scroll on him gets crushed and killed by the golem. Sangwoo, seeing this, is horrified, but he suddenly has an epiphany and runs at the monster as it is about to eat his clone. Sangwoo throws something in the golem's mouth as it bites down and he sits down panting as he explains what he did. He had taken the teleportation scroll that his clone had and used it as his clone got eaten, thus teleporting the golem's core and killing it. After killing the golem, he finally levels up and now he can summon 7 clones. He tells his clones to keep moving and the scene turns black. Here the scene shifts to a familiar face and it's the thug from before talking to the bigger meatball thug that Sangwoo had beat up. The smaller thug is seen explaining how he had been caught up by the Silver Moon Guild and the bigger one is impressed at how he managed to survive their grasp. Hesitantly he explains how he had got some help but doesn't mention he got it from Sangwoo. The bigger thug is confused, so he doesn't push the matter further, but in the middle of their conversation a loud banging comes from their door. The bigger thug answers the door and someone punches him in the face without warning. It's Kang Chung-sung, the vice leader of the Silver Moon Guild, and he demands to know who attacked his guild members previously. He smirks as he tells the thug that he is the third person he is asking and explains how the 2 previous people he had asked said they didn't know anything as he shows his bloody brass knuckles. The meatball thug lunges at Kang with a punch, but he catches it easily and he laughs as he beats his face, and seeing how the bigger thug is on the brink of death, the smaller one finally steps in and goes on his knees and begs for their lives, stating how he knows who did it. Kane brushes his hair back and with a maniacal smile tells his group that he had told them beating them up would lead to something good. The scene shifts back to Sangwoo and his clones inching towards where Team 1 had disappeared. Sangwoo comments how it's weird how they haven't seen a monster in a while, but there are multiple dead bodies on the floor. Sengu tells his clones to look for any traces of battle by the assault team. But suddenly one of his clones stabs something near Sangwoo. A monster had materialized before saying woo and had used an invisibility skill in an attempt to ambush him. Fortunately, one of Sengu's clones had intervened just in time to save him from certain death. Thousands of these monsters appear all at once and proceed to attack Sangu and his clones. They fight them off, and Sangu is astonished at how his clones are able to fight the invisible monsters. Since he can't fight the monsters himself, he lets his clone take over and monologue vlogs how he's still lacking in power. The scene shifts to inside the subdimension where the Keen's Guild team captain and her team are stuck. They are seen with dead, hopeless eyes as they wonder if the rescue team will come for them today. It's been so long that she can't bring herself to say to the group to have some hope. As she looks outside for her daily check, she opens a small window to see, and she is shocked to hear fighting going on outside. Meanwhile, Sangwa and his clones are fighting the horde of monsters off, but his team had sustained many small injuries, and it's starting to pile up. He sees a sub-dimension window being formed in front of him, and being too overwhelmed by the monster horde, he orders his clones to make a beeline to the window. The team leader on the other side of the sub-dimension can't believe what she's seeing, and she informs her team about the group approaching, which prompts all of them to watch in disbelief. They see Sangu and his clones running full speed at the sub-dimension inn, and they all panic as he is bringing all the monsters with him. As he is running for his life, he proudly announces how he is there to rescue them, so he pleads for them to save him first. Seeing this, they all support him and use their various powers to safely bring Sengbu into the subdimension. Sengu, out of breath, thanks them for saving him and declares he's the rescue team for Team 1, and the team all look in disbelief seeing how this out-of-shape person was sent by Park. They ask him many questions and they inquire about the 4 eyes that almost died from the last episode, and Sangu responds he's doing well but he hasn't woken up yet. Before they ask any questions, he tells them that they need to get out of there now and they should use the teleportation scrolls so they can go home. But instead of being happy, they all hang their heads, and the team leader, bowing her head, pleads Sang-woo to help them one last time. They go on to explain that one of their teammates had died during the mission and that they can't bring themselves to leave her body in the dungeon. Sangu asked what happened and they explained that they got ambushed by the same monsters Sengu had faced earlier, and their teammate that happened to be their healer got taken out first, which prompted them to panic and hide in the subdimension. But unfortunately, one of the invisible monsters had snuck in and stabbed the 4-eyed dude, which explains why he was on the brink of death. Sengu asks where the dead body is, and it is revealed that her body is far away and they would need to fight those monsters again in order to retrieve it. Seeing how they had all waited 6 months in the subdimension to retrieve their dead teammate's corpse, he grits his teeth and agrees to help, but under 2 conditions. He explains how, since he was tasked with saving them specifically, if he sees any chance of failing, he is going to get them all out, and second, he only wants his clones to take care of it. The Team 1 members all disagree and deem it too dangerous and insist that they help as well, but Sangu reassures them and explains how they're not actually real people, but they're his clones. The scene shifts to Kang's office where a horrific scene commences. The vice leader for the Silver Moon Guild is seen beating Kang for information. He demands to know who the person is that took their goods, and he proceeds to grab King's arm. Kane grits his teeth and tells him to F off, and so the vice leader breaks his arm, causing Kang to scream horrifically in pain. One of his minions interrupts and shows him a document he had found about the person